Modern science basically says the universe started with a big bang, but bang is an onomatopoeia. It's a sound word.
Sound is the last
Sense that leaves the body when you're dying. Material success is never enough. I've never met anyone where their material success satisfied their heart. There was always something missing. I'm not my money, I'm not my birth, I'm not my job, I'm not the success or the failure. Who am I?
Why is Kalyug made in the first place? Right, Namaste, Gaura Vani Prabhu,
Namaste.
Hare Krishna, and welcome to the LSM podcast. We're excited to have you here, and there's so many topics that I want to touch upon. There's this wave, global wave now of Kirtan, and you've been one of the pioneers of it. So I want to talk about Kirtan, and I want to talk about many other things. When we met, I got a sense that you're so deeply connected to the spiritual movement in this country. So I want to delve into that and some of your experiences. But I think you have a surprise for us before we begin.
I would love to share a song if I can.
Yes.
It's a nice way to start.
Yes.
So this song, it brings in both mantra and English mantra, sacred sound. Shree Krishna Sharanam Mama, Shree Krishna Sharanam Mama, Shree Krishna Sharanam Mama, Shree Krishna Sharanam. When I play this song for people in the West who have never heard these mantras before, I say, Krishna means my dearest friend, the all-attractive one, the one who loves me more than anyone could ever imagine to love me. Sri Krishna. Sharanam, refuge, a safe harbor from the storms of life. Sri Krishna Sharanam Mama, Sri Krishna Sharanam. 46 years I've been doing it my way, and it's brought me here to Level SuperMind. The road behind me is littered with the ruins of decisions I've made in fear. But don't be afraid. The Lord has so sweetly said, and depending on His word, I will surrender, 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 yeah. If you'd like, wherever you are listening to this podcast, just, if you're in your car, roll down the windows of your car. If you're at your work, just turn up your headphones and don't mind if anyone's listening. I want you to sing with me as loud as you can, wherever you are hearing this. Shree Krishna Sharanam. Shree Krishna Sharanam Mama, Shree Krishna Sharanam Mama, Shree Krishna Sharanam Mama, Shree Krishna Sharanam. I pray to be a bow upon my life, affix an arrow, a dazzling weapon of your will, my Lord. And like the poet said, let that string that sings be mine, and as a simple tool of your design. Remember, remember, pretender, pretender, you gotta surrender, surrender. Oh, yeah. Shree Krishna, Sharanam. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank
I felt it.
you.
I felt it. Especially at the end, I felt like you were showering something onto me.
I was receiving just like you. I was, yeah, sound, sacred sound. I mean, that's one of the reasons why podcasts are so powerful, is because sound can reach people in their heart. And, there's a story I was thinking of. This cartoon character Bugs Bunny?
Yeah.
So there's a really powerful story about the power of sound. The man who, let me take a second and put this guitar
Yeah, of course,
down.
of course.
The man, here. So some of us, I didn't really grow up watching television, but in the time that I grew up, Looney Tunes and Bugs Bunny was like really in the culture. So we can talk more about that later, how I kind of caught up with the culture, after I came out of Gurukula. But the incredible thing about Bugs Bunny and Looney Tunes is all the voices are done by one man, Mel Blanc. He does all the voices for the whole show. So it's like 1,500 different voices.
Wow.
And they're all banked because each character has to have the same voice each time. So Mel Blanc was already famous. He was in his 60s. His son was in his 30s. Already famous, years of production. He got in a major car accident and was in a coma. And no one could wake him up from the coma. 2 weeks he was in a coma. This is a 100% true story told by his son. And when I heard this story, I thought mantra. I thought this is exactly about mantra, the power of sound. So he's in a coma for 2 weeks. Every day his son's coming to visit him. Every day the doctor's coming, and they don't know what to do. And the son asked the doctor, what is happening with my father? And they said, basically, his brain is like an engine. It's on idle. And it's just like, but it can't start. Something is missing. It's not starting. We don't know why, but it's not starting. So they're just waiting. 2 weeks go by, and one day the doctor comes in and he picks up the sheet, just checking all the signs. And he says, all right, what's up, doc? Which is a famous line from Bugs Bunny. What's up, doc? And Mel Blanc wakes up from the coma and he goes, and he starts doing the voices. Bugs Bunny's voice was so deep in his psyche that when he heard the voice that he had helped create, it started his brain back up again. Now, this is just a silly cartoon. Imagine what the sages and the mystics say about the power of sound. Beyond this body is our true self, that this body is just like a cartoon character, one of the many characters that we've played. And when the sound touches us, it can reawaken.
From across generations. From across lives.
From across lifetimes. And even if you don't believe in that, there's so many people. I mean, I hope this is not inappropriate, but when I was younger, before I was married, I was dating one lady. And when she broke up with me, she gave me a cassette tape of songs to break up with me. I don't know if, like a breakup tape. And still to this day, when I hear those, I've been married for almost 30 years now, 3 kids, totally happy. But still when I hear the songs on that tape, it's like, my heart is like, the feeling is there. So even if you don't believe in the soul or the body, something beyond the body, still there's a power in sound.
What is it that you, when you first got attracted to Kirtan, this power of sound? Actually, let's take a step back,
Sure.
to Kirtan. Like, I wanna take the audiences a bit from your perspective on the history of Kirtan, and where does that Kirtan movement begin? Where does it come into the consciousness of modern society? Let's start with that, and then we can go into your story.
Cool. It's awesome speaking with an audience like yours, because a lot of times people don't know anything. So I have to kind of like, everything I say, I have to kind of, qualify it. But
Yeah, just go like deep in, because
Let's
that's
go
what our
deep.
audience loves.
Let's
They
go
they
deep.
just love going in.
So Kirtan is timeless. There's kind of 2 views of the world. Modern science basically says the universe started with a big bang. But bang is an onomatopoeia. It's a sound word. It means a big sound. I mean, bang is a sound. It means a big sound. And the Vedas say Om or Tapa, depending on the story. Brahma hears a sound, which is the sound of the flute of Krishna awakening in his heart, and he begins to create as an offering to his source. Everything we see is Brahma's offering in remembrance of his divine source. So whatever. The Bible even says, in the beginning was the Word. So the Bible, modern science, and the Vedas all agree that first was sound.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's super, super interesting. So Kirtan has existed forever. Sound, bang. And they say sound is the last sense to leave the body. Just like Mel Blanc, he's in a coma, but he can still hear. He's hearing the doctor. The doctor wasn't inside of him.
Sound is the last
sense that leaves the body when you're dying.
Oh, is it?
That's what they say.
Okay.
Your sight may go. Your ability to express yourself may go. You may be covered in pain that you can't feel, you can't touch. But hearing is still there.
Oh, it's the last one that leaves.
That leaves before.
That leaves you.
Yeah. So according to the, modern science sees time in a linear way, beginning, middle, end. But of course, the Vedic time is cyclical. So each yuga leads to the next yuga, which again leads back to the first yuga, right? Satya, Treta, Dwapara, Kali, Satya, Treta, like that. It's the cycle. So according to Vedic knowledge, Kirtan has always been there. But each yuga, each time, what do they call it? Epoch, has its own kind of way of connecting with that beyond the body. They say in Satya, it's meditation. In Treta, it's Agnihotra, fire sacrifices. Dwapara, it's temple worship. And in Kali, it's Kirtan. So Kirtan's always existing in all the ages. But one of the big kind of in modern times, what year was Ramanuja? I don't know if the time period exactly, but 1,000 years ago or more than that, Ramanuja came, and there's this famous story from South India of he went walking 300 miles to meet this guru who had this mantra. You must have heard this story before.
Yeah.
And he kept going, and the guru kept saying, no, you're not ready. He kept going. He walked like 20 times to get this mantra. And finally the guru says, I'll give you the mantra under one condition: you don't share it with anyone. The next day, he climbs up on the temple and shares it with the whole town. And when the guru comes to him, Goshti Purna, he says, I gave you one instruction. Why did you break it? Om Namo Narayanaya was the mantra. And now you hear it on loudspeakers all over. And he said, you told me this mantra can wipe away any obstacle on the path towards connecting with God. Why wouldn't I share it with everyone? And he said, don't you understand that you're taking the sins of anyone that you initiate into this mantra, and you just initiated the whole town? And he said, how can the pain of one man outweigh the needs of everyone? And in that moment, his guru said, you are the guru and I am the disciple.
Wow.
This is a very famous story in South India. Yeah. So this is one of the times that Kirtan and Kalyug really came out. And another time is with Sri Chaitanya. And that's like 500 years ago. And Sri Chaitanya appeared in West Bengal. And today actually is a special day because the day that we're shooting this podcast is the birthday of his brother Nityananda. And the two of them together created this tsunami of Kirtan. You know,
we are talking about Ramanuja and he initiating the thought of Kirtan basically to kind of percolate the thought of mantra in the public stream of consciousness.
Right, to get it out with everyone.
To get it out there. But then it really takes a peak with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, it does. In fact, I was going to say, if it wasn't for the followers of Chaitanya, the world boom of Kirtan wouldn't be happening, actually. You know, people, like you can go to every single town in the world and someone is doing Kirtan, even forget outside of India, anywhere. Russia, Germany, South America, you know, all over the North America, you know.
That's why he's seen with the Mridanga also.
Because this Mridanga is meant for what they call Nagar Sankirtan, bringing it into the streets, out in public. It doesn't matter if you're a Brahmin, it doesn't matter if you're Hindu, it doesn't matter if you're young, old woman, high class, low class, this, that, it doesn't matter. Everyone can be together in Kirtan. Children can do it, old people can do it. Kirtan is a practice, because what is it? What is Kirtan? The soul is using the most primal instrument, which is the voice, to cry out in love. You know, and if there is a God, how can God ignore that? A soul crying out into the vast universe.
Can I ask you a question? I don't know if you have the answer or not, but like, why is Kalyug made in the first place? Because if it's if it's a challenging time, if it's a time where we are covered by our tendencies, and if we are more...
It's more difficult, harder to connect.
If it's difficult, if we are moving, it's easier to move towards Rajasic tendencies in this time. Why is it made in the first place?
It's a great question. It's a question that I used to ask when I was a kid, not specifically about the age of Kali, but just about the whole material world. I would ask that question. I would, you know, when I was young, I went to Gurukula. Even though my body is white, my mom became a follower of Prabhupada and a devotee of Krishna when she was 16. We can talk more about that later.
Yeah, we will, yeah.
So I grew up from the age of 4 in Gurukula.
And this Gurukul was in?
Some different Gurukulas at different temples, some in the US and some, I went to Vrindavan Gurukul also when I was 6.
Okay.
For a short time, for one school year. 1982, Vrindavan was very different than it is now. I just came from Vrindavan. Oh my gosh, it's so different. There was one phone in Vrindavan. You had to wait at the phone, schedule an international call. So I used to ask that. I would be in the temple and I'd be thinking, doesn't Krishna know that I want to reconnect? Why is he making it so difficult? Why doesn't he just take me back? Why do I have to go through all this fuss and difficulty? So the analogy that's often given is that we are co-creating this reality with Krishna. And that's why it's the way that it is, you know. If you take one criminal and you ask him, create a world with whatever you want, he'll center the whole thing around him, and all the rules can be broken by him. And everyone else has to do what he wants. That's a criminal mentality, right? And then you add one more criminal. Now the two of them are fighting with each other. And then another, and then another. That's what this material world is a bunch of criminals. We can't be left to our own devices. We can't be trusted, so we're put in the jail. Actually, according to the sages and the gurus, this material world is just a tiny part of existence. This is not everything. It's like, sometimes I think of it like an insane asylum, you know, and each life is almost like a theater production that someone is putting us through to learn how to rehabilitate ourselves, to remember what the outside world is like. Don't you remember? People have jobs. This is a wife. This is a husband. Now we're going to do a theater play and everyone's going to learn what reality is like again, so you can heal yourself and then re-enter reality. So all these ages, it's all just part of the natural order of like turning the soil, you know? And, you know, there's this great quote, I might have to pull it up, I can't remember, but it's a quote by Einstein. And I'll paraphrase, you know, but he says, you have a choice. Basically, either the universe is against you, or the universe is just completely playing dice and there's no rhyme or reason to anything, or the universe is for you. These are the choices. And he's, you know, Mr. Relativity. So he says, if you choose that the universe is against you, then all of your energy goes to protecting yourself and creating weapons and protection and devices for dominating others out of fear. Fear, fear, fear. And it grows and grows and grows until the world destroys itself. Which is kind of, I mean, I hate to be a downer, but, you know, if you look around, there's a lot of that going on. And then he says, or it's just total chaos and everything's just up to chance. So there's no rhyme, there's no reason. So now what's the third option? The universe is friendly and it's loving and it's conspiring with us. It's trying to help us. It's trying to, you know, align everything to help us. And I think that's the model that I choose to see.
I found the interesting segue into our next part. I want to talk actually more about, I haven't got my answer, to be honest.
Okay.
But like,
well, what do you think? What do you think is the answer to why there's Kalyug?
I don't know the answer. I think that...
Do you find people learn through difficulty?
Yeah, like, I guess to simplify it, that would be the only kind of... I think there would be two parts to it, which is that to, you know, to compress through most difficult times emerges...
Diamond from the coal.
Yeah, so maybe like it's a circular upward. So like, you know, this...
The universe is conspiring with us to help us elevate.
Yeah, but I can only speculate. So I don't know. I mean, honestly, and maybe I should ask this question to more people. Yeah, so I'm very curious to know about your childhood in Gurukul. And I want to dive into that. But before I dive into that, I also want to understand if there's anything else you want to add, because I've not been satisfied with the answer. So maybe there's something that you have to pull out.
Well, this is a great question, and I think these kinds of questions help create a life worth living, a life of value. When I was young, I've had a very strange life. When I was in my teens, I ended up in Hollywood. I was in some movies and a television show. I was working in Hollywood as an actor. And I got to meet some really powerful, famous people. And I've noticed a pattern. Material success is never enough. I've never met anyone where their material success satisfied their heart. There was always something missing. So this kind of questioning brings us to a life worth living. So it's a great question. I just wanted to add one thing. The one thing that God cannot have, God can have anything, right? By definition, God is unlimited. He can create anything, he can have anything. So what's the one thing God can't have? Do you have any idea what they say that one thing is? Can you imagine what's something God can't have? He can't get and he can't have.
It's a tough question.
So in Bhakti, they say, your love. It's the only thing that God cannot have, because only you can give your love. If God was to take your love, it becomes abuse, it becomes dominance, it becomes not love, it becomes adoration or respect or power, a power dynamic, but it's not love. Love must be given freely. So the whole purpose of this world is to give us whatever we want so that one day we realize, I've tried everything. I've had all the success, I've had all the failure. And now maybe I just want you, and I just want to love you, and maybe that's enough. And all these things won't satisfy me.
So it's a cleansing.
It's a cleansing.
It's allowing you saying, go do what you want.
It's like,
and you're going to come back here.
Right. It's like I have teenagers. At some point, I have to tell my teenagers, go live your life. And I hope that I've raised them well enough that they come back and our relationship is strong. Because that's love. I can't take love from my children. I have to give it and hope that they give it back.
Okay, nice. That's a great...
And it ties in, we can talk more about this later, but it ties into Chaitanya. And the reason for Chaitanya coming and Kirtan coming is to reawaken this loving heart. That's what's expressed through Kirtan. But we can talk more about that later.
Yeah. No, we have to talk more about Kirtan.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to go into this. It's so interesting that I'm able to speak to somebody who's grown up in Gurukul, who's born in Washington.
Born in Los Angeles. Actually, I was born in Beverly Hills.
Born in Beverly Hills. Born in Beverly Hills and decides to grow up in Gurukul. Or like is made to grow up in Gurukul.
Made to grow up in Gurukul.
So, or like is destined to grow up in Gurukul. So, you know, I want to understand what it's like. What is this Gurukul system like?
One of the reasons that I know I am not this body, that I am the soul, is that what culture do I belong to? Am I Indian? I don't look Indian, but I've grown up with Kirtan, and I've grown up with Indian food, and I've grown up with Indian practices and rituals. But when an Indian person looks at me, they see an Angrezi. So that who am I? And I'm not an American because it's easier for me to remember Indian names than it is to remember like Tom. Someone will say, my name is Tom. And then I'm like, oh my God, what? They all sound the same. What was his name? Travis? It's like really, it's so funny. So yeah, my mom, when she was 16, she met her guru. She met Srila Prabhupada. And proof, if anyone needs proof that Prabhupada is a truly enlightened teacher, the first thing he said to her when he met her was, where are your parents? She was so young. It's like a real honest question, like not some grand mystical thing. He said, you're so young, where are your parents? But this was the 60s. Everyone was running away from their lives. My mom's father had fought in World War II, come back, successful business person. But she couldn't get answers to the questions that she was asking. She would ask and they'd say, just because. That's how we do it. That's the tradition, whatever. So she left home and was searching. So she met Prabhupada and she started getting the answers and starting to understand the meaning of existence. Why do we live? Why do we do what we do? Why do we suffer? Who am I?
Where did she meet Srila Prabhupada?
In New York City.
Okay.
1968.
That's when he landed on the boat.
He came in 65.
Okay, and then he was doing Kirtan in Central Park.
Doing Kirtan in the parks in New York. And then he had some disciples that went out to San Francisco. And my mom was in San Francisco. And when they came back, they brought my mom with them and met Prabhupada. So I was born. Prabhupada only was like just more than a decade. He traveled around the world and taught. So my mom, I was born just before Prabhupada left this world. So a lot of Prabhupada's students, they kind of severed themselves from their families, One of the things I always tell people, I always tell people the story of my mom as a Hare Krishna devotee, and as I'm meeting more people who don't have any connection in the West, who have no connection with ashrams and temples, I said to my mom recently, I need a new origin story, because people don't know what an ashram is. Like, how am I supposed to say my mom joined an ashram if they don't know what an ashram is? Like what? So she said, let me think about it. I'll come back with a new origin story. You know the term origin story, right? All businesses successful, Apple's created in a garage and, whatever. Everyone has an origin story. So she came and she said, here's your origin story. Your parents abandoned you on the steps of a temple in India. You don't know who your parents are. And you grew up thinking Krishna is your father. And I said, you want me to tell people that I don't know who my parents are? This is my mom. I don't know who my parents are, and I was orphaned on the steps of a temple. And she said, yeah. She said, and I said, but it's not true. That's not a real origin story. She said, but it's kind of true. She said, you can tell them it's kind of true. So in a sense, that is what happened. A lot of the devotees of Prabhupada had cut themselves off from their material background and just gave themselves fully to Krishna. So those of us who brought up in the movement as their kids, we basically felt that, Krishna Mata, Krishna Pita, Krishna Dana Pran, that Lord is everything. So Gurukula from the age of 4 in America, it was really like a very tumultuous time. And I think...
Why was it tumultuous?
I think most of the devotees were like ex-hippies. A lot of them were barely had their lives together. It wasn't like a sage under a banyan tree in a village who had been teaching his father and his father before him. And, it was just like these random people who had just become devotees, So they weren't really so qualified. There was a lot, for the early generations, it was quite difficult. And even the leadership of the Hare Krishna movement was very neophyte. And many of the teachers who studied under Prabhupada and then took the mantle of taking responsibility, many of them also struggled, fell away. So the movement has gone through, since Prabhupada left in 77. So I'm 46, I was born in 77. So almost 50 years now since Prabhupada, the movement has started to, balance itself out. Just today, we had lunch at the Pejawar Mutt today, where there was a homa, fire sacrifice. And the priest there knows many of the leaders of ISKCON, and there's many connections. And now, like this, it's like a little bit more strong, the international movement. But at the time, it was
So what was it like growing up? If you just break it down for me, what did you learn?
Yeah, we would wake up for Mangal Arati at 4:30.
Okay.
So you have to wake up before, shower. You're cold. You're putting on your little dhoti with your little shaved head.
And there was the mandir then.
The first Gurukul I was in Pennsylvania. It's snowy and cold in the winter. And you'd walk to the temple through the darkness. And 4:30 in the morning, there's Krishna in his pajamas. And you're chanting.
And how many other kids were there with you in Gurukul?
That Gurukul of 40, 50.
Okay.
Like that. By the time I was in Vrindavan, 120 in Vrindavan when I was 6.
Okay, so you wake up at 4:30, you go for the Mangal Aarti.
Then you're supposed to chant your japa.
Okay.
But you're a little kid, so you're like falling asleep, But chanting is supposed to be meditating, Our parents thought they were making little saints, little pralads, But we were just like lonely kids, So then there's a bunch of other things, Guru Puja, Shringar Arti, different ceremonies through the morning, Bhagavatam class. This is like the beginning of the day. And then, after breakfast, you would do your studies, but the studies included Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, mantra practice, harmonium, mridanga, kirtan practice. The day basically filled up with these kind of activities. The great thing about...
Sorry, but what about the worldly stuff?
Yeah, so math, English. But when you're reading Bhagavatam translated into English, you're learning better English than most children learn because these Elizabethan words and, but math was less emphasized, learning puja, learning kirtan, learning Bhagavatam, mantra recitation.
And do you have any friends right now from your Gurukul days?
Yeah, and we're quite close actually. So there's one generation kind of before me, and they had it really hard. Some of them came and their parents had been like drug addicts. before they came to the Krishna movement. And then in the temple, they became nice devotees. But those children were like, almost like they could never find the solid ground. They kind of were caught in between two cultures. So that was very difficult for the first generation. My generation, it got a little bit better. And then each generation, it's like now the kids in Gurukula, they have a fantastic time. They're like, it's like a constant party. They just love it.
So in the US right now, how many people are in the movement at this point in time?
Wow.
Like give or take. I mean, would you say it's like progressively increased? Or, because
sure.
I don't know, like I can understand when you're talking about this, when you are saying that, okay, at the start of the movement, because here comes this great saint across the, across
the ocean.
On a boat.
Cargo ship,
exactly. Like, going through like crazy sickness on that ship.
Multiple heart attacks.
Yeah, 2 heart attacks, right? Yeah. Like, so almost passes away on that, reaches the shores, and then he's, it's not like he lands and there's suddenly adulation.
There was nothing. There was no one and there was nothing.
Yeah, so he spends a few years just chanting.
He had chevra and 40 rupees.
Yeah.
40, you couldn't even change the 40 rupees, so he had nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that's him. And then this movement starts to accelerate and gain steam. And I think then he came back to Vrindavan. He passed away in Vrindavan.
Yeah, he came back to India multiple times. He came back to India first when he started feeling unwell again. He thought maybe being in India would help him get better. And the movement was fledgling, and he would come back and forth. And eventually, the amazing thing about destiny is Prabhupada, who became, arguably one of the greatest modern emissaries of bhakti, since Chaitanya, 500 years. So many people in the world affected. He wrote so many books. If he hadn't been a failure in India, trying to teach bhakti in India to Indians, he would have never come to America. So Krishna made him fail again and again in India. No one was interested. He had to beg the cargo ship ticket.
He had to go through his Kalyug.
He had to go through, his own process. After taking sannyas, leaving everything, he had been a successful pharmaceutical executive. And after taking sannyas, thinking, now I've devoted my life to God, he was gored by a cow in the middle of the street, almost died. And he's thinking, if I made the wrong decision, is this Krishna's way of telling me I made a big mistake? I should have never left my family. So he went through so much difficulty. But it wasn't until he had some success in America and he brought back these Western Vaishnavas, Western bhaktas who were singing, who were feeling ecstasy from these practices, that the Indian people thought, what is this? This is something. And Prabhupada, a lot of modern gurus and teachers, they'll do something like they'll produce vibhuti from their hand, or they'll spit up a golden idol, or they'll create a Rolex watch from some mysterious place. But people would say to Prabhupada, what is your Shakti?
Superpower. Yeah.
What is your superpower? And he would say, this is my superpower. Transforming the heart from iron into gold. This is the real superpower. To make someone who used to eat cow flesh, had no connection with even a awakening of any kind, to now become someone who's dedicated their lives fully to serving God.
So, this is so interesting because you have the movement in the early days, and it's kind of, it's very, like you said, it's a lot of hippies, almost flipping 180 of their lives into this. And then I can imagine as a result of that, there's a lot of conflict. So when you say the kids were, born in the middle of that conflict, some of them, so that's the challenging time to be in. And then comes your generation, which is a bit more,
a little more integrated,
But still conflict. And then what's it like now?
Each generation has gotten sweeter and sweeter. That one of the cool things about learning Kirtan is, when my parents learned how to play the mridanga. They would just like bang on it, like, a table, They didn't know anything. But as the children learned traditional rhythms, tala and raga, and playing harmonium and these tunes, these bhajans, these songs, we got really good. And soon we were better than the adults. And so the adults would have us lead the kirtans. And kirtan became this place just for the young people. And now it's incredible. So my kids, my eldest is 19, 17, and my youngest is 14. They will organize with their friends on a weekend where they're not in school, a kirtan festival where they'll sit for 3 days, 10 hours of kirtan, and they'll just sit. Teenagers, they're not on their phone. They're not like, doing some weird drugs.
What's the size of the audience?
It depends on the festival. It can be anything from like 20, 30 to thousands. And the kids organize these festivals and they'll just sit in a circle and they'll just sing and sing. And they pass the mic and now it's his turn and now it's her turn. And they all record each other and they share it with each other. Wow. And they learn the tunes from each other.
Where is this? This is in Washington.
All over the world. It's amazing. SoundCloud is filled with all these channels of these free kirtan festivals that the youth are organizing. The one in DC is called Capital Kirtan. But when I helped organize something called 24-hour Kirtan in New Vrindavan, which is in West Virginia. So there's a very saintly devotee named Ayendra who was in Vrindavan. Ayendra Prabhu encouraged all the young people to come together and they would do 24-hour Kirtan in shifts, morning, midday, evening, like that, all through the night. And so a lot of young people got just like...
Where have I heard of this name, Ayendra Prabhu?
He's quite famous in this conversation about Kirtan.
Yeah, I heard of him. I think was he in Vrindavan recently?
Yeah, he passed away, but he was in Vrindavan for many years.
Okay.
He was the head of this 24-hour Kirtan for many years.
Yeah, I've heard of this. I've got to maybe like figure this out. But this is so interesting, the way the movement has kind of, right from this storm to settling it, and now it's now a calm sea where people are just sailing towards where they need to go.
It's amazing. It's really amazing. I have a friend who works at Google. His name is Gopi Kalayal, and he travels around. He's like a Google ambassador. So he does a lot of traveling, and he's been to many temples. And he said, I haven't seen a community of youth as activated as the Krishna youth. It's almost like they're more on fire than they were when Prabhupada was physically here. Something is increasing.
How's the rest of the American public looking at that? Like, is it like, hey, these are these crazy Hare Krishna people, or is it like, oh, this is very, I admire this, or how is it? Like, because this is new information, even for an Indian audience, this is new information.
America, wow. America is the number one creator and purveyor of myth through Hollywood and, popular music. They try and ignore the Hare Krishna movement as much as possible.
Okay. Why ignore?
Well, America is primarily a Christian country. And we were talking about this earlier. A lot of Western Hindus raised in America, they are kind of taught not to think well of Hindu nationalism, Modi, and the whole kind of current reawakening of Hinduism on a national level in India, even international. It's a similar thing. I mean, a lot of people in the world learn about Hinduism, but it's taught through the lens of Max Mueller and Catholic scholars and Victorian scholars. It's not real Hinduism. It's not coming from the Vedas. It's reimagined through the eyes of Christianity. And that's what people are taught when they're taught about Hinduism. So a lot of even young Indian people in America, second generation, they're learning about Hinduism from their Christian teachers. So unless they're learning from someone like Prabhupada, and actually studying, reading Bhagavatam for themselves, reading Gita for themselves. They're not getting the direct. You know, one of the two, they learn, like, everyone learns two things. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. There are three primary gods, which is not actually a fact. It's just how people learn Hinduism. And the caste system. These are like the two things that, and that Hindus worship cows. This is like the three things that everyone learns. But without context, that doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any sense. You know, in Christianity, they worship the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So they have three gods too. But if you tell that to a Christian, they'll be like, no, 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 you misunderstand. Of course, because you're also misunderstanding. You know, we get blind a little bit. You know, we kind of, we don't see the context around things, and we often get blind to what we don't know.
This is such an interesting challenge to solve, because the human mind is finite, or at least till some of us have the opportunity to really split it open through the process of bhakti and through Vigyan and you know, things like that.
So we level up our mind.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a challenging process till we get there. So the mind is finite, and then effectively, you know, like, even if I'm studying Christianity, or I'm seeing Christianity, or if I'm studying Hinduism, or within Hinduism a specific kind of Vedantic philosophy, till you don't walk that path, it's never going to really open up for you.
Right.
You know, and
it's experiential. It's not just the mind and the heart actually have to meet.
Yeah, it takes so much time, and it takes so much experience.
Yeah.
And you know, you can spend your whole lifetime just walking one path and still not know enough about it.
Yeah.
Or maybe in today's time, one could argue that you could walk multiple paths, because we're living like compressed lifetimes. You know, we're living many lifetimes in one lifetime.
Sure.
I feel like that's what's happening with us right now, because the amount of change and the pace of change that we're seeing allows us to do that. So I wonder...
At least it appears that it allows us to do that.
It appears so. So I wonder if also that allows for human beings to explore, in a good sense, multiple spiritual dimensions of, you know, achieving the divine. So I guess my question is that...
That's like polyamory. You know what polyamory is? It's very popular in the West with creative people.
Yeah.
Why have one wife when you can have multiple wives and husbands? And everyone is just all married to each other. So I could make a logical case for polyamory. But I also happen to have been married for the last 25, 30 years. And I can tell you, my wife and I have created a home for our children. And if that wasn't there, our children wouldn't be the wonderful people that they are. That structure, just like as a young person learning Kirtan, that structure gave me Kirtan. If I had just, we're going to do a little Kirtan, then we're going to do a little this, you're going to learn a little jazz, you're going to, like, you know, I'll be very creative, but where's the depth, you know? I believe that there's this beautiful story from another tradition. There's a beautiful story from Rumi, from the Sufi mystic tradition, that talks about how all the different wells in the villages, they all come from the same underground river, which is God. But the thing is, sampling all the wells doesn't get you
to the depth of
the depth. And you won't know how to dig a well until you do the work of digging the well. You have to find a place and dig a well. And I personally believe that God is that underground river. And even, let's take the word God out of it. That mystery, the source, our beloved, whatever language you want to use, is connecting all of us. And it's the source of all of that deep wisdom and knowledge. But until you do the work of digging the well, in whatever tradition it is, until you taste that water and actually can learn how to draw it, it's a shallow version.
Let's switch gears to deep wisdom, and you know, the various texts that you've studied. So you studied, obviously, growing up, the Bhagavad Gita, and a lot of our listeners like to understand from the lens of studying the Bhagavad Gita, and I'm trying to ask you a specific question so that I don't want to ask you like a broad, what's a lesson from it? But this point that you make about digging the well and doing the work, how can the Bhagavad Gita be an ally to you when you're digging the well and doing the work?
Well, you're also a student of the Gita.
I'm a student, yes.
The Gita is a really practical text. I think that's one of the best things about it. It can be applied. It's not a theoretical text. I think I've found, and I'm curious if you've also found, that the Gita can be applied in our lives in many ways. That you always find some wisdom somewhere that you can take and use. Have you found that also?
I have, yes. Like I feel like I've tried to understand or started to understand how, as you go through the chapters of the Gita, and if you like allow it to link to the chapters of your life, you uncover new realities. So like I know that when like sincere study of the Gita came into my life, I was going through a situation similar to the battlefield of chapter 1, and the way it was unfolding in front of me, that it really brought me face to face with my own reality, that I was a bit like Arjun saying, come, let's ride the chariot, come, let's see who has...
Come, let's see the battlefield.
Let's see the battlefield. Let's see who has the guts.
Here. Right.
Let's see who has the guts.
Who's showed up for the fight.
Who showed up for the fight. Let's see who showed up for the fight. And then he's overcome with anxiety. So I was going through a difficult situation in my life, trying to just face it blindly, saying, let's just attack it. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, I can't do this. Similar like the end of chapter 1. And then as we uncover different concepts, so like the first concept that really appealed to me, even though it's not mentioned in the second chapter, but it's it's alluded to, the
right,
concept
because the second chapter is like the whole Gita condensed.
Yeah. So it's like how the concept of Swadharma really appealed to me. And then that's when I started to collect myself back together because of it.
Who am I?
Who am I?
So Gita is like considered to be like all Vedic wisdom collected into a condensed, easy to understand format. And Arjuna is our representative in the story. So Gita is like, you ever heard of a book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Yeah. So it's like the real version of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's like actually, Krishna says, every time you lose this book, I show up and I give you the book again. I gave it to the sun god. I gave it to Manu. Now I'm giving it to you. I'll keep coming back. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Here you go. And I think so many scholars throughout time, I mean, instrumental people in human history have taken wisdom from the Gita. And it's the introduction to the whole body of Vedic wisdom. And the main thing, which I think is connected to music, the main point is, you are not this body. This is not you. The body, mind, intelligence, and false sense of self are just like a shirt. And when it gets old, you have to discard it and put on a new one. It's just a vehicle. So then the question is, who am I? There's a beautiful story. These two brothers, Rupa and Sanatan, who were the prominent students of Chaitanya, the first two of the six Goswamis, they were, at their time, they were like Elon Musk, or like, what's his name?
Jeff Bezos.
They were vastly wealthy beyond imagination. The king of Gaur, who was a Muslim, treated them like his brothers. They ran the kingdom. One was the prime minister, the other one was the interior secretary, or something like that. They planned his wars, they did his treasury, they managed the taxes, they managed the operations, the whole thing. And so he treated them like equals in the kingdom. And, And working for the Mughal government was the only game in town at the time. That was the only thing happening if you were an intelligent, successful person. So when they finally met Chaitanya, the question that these influential people asked is, Ke Ami, who am I? I don't know who I am. I'm not my money. I'm not my birth. I'm not my job. I'm not the success or the failure. Who am I? And Chaitanya said to them, Jivar Swarupahoy Krishna Nityadas. You are an eternal loving servant of the divine. That's who you are forever. And anything else is just preparing you for that, reawakening that. The Bugs Bunny sound bite to waken you back up to who you are. So they gave up their billions. I mean, imagine if you just read in the news today, Elon Musk has walked away from his company with no plan for succession. He doesn't care who owns Twitter, X, whatever. He doesn't care who owns SpaceX. He's now living in Vrindavan under a tree wearing a blanket. People would just be like, that is the craziest thing I ever heard. That's what happened. And they just began taking all his teachings and breaking them down. Because this is the question, and this is the question all the famous people I've ever met in my life, music, Hollywood, wealthy people, Ke Ami. Everyone wants to know, Ke Ami, because I'm not all these things. So you start stripping it away. Who am I? Who am I? Prabhupada used to say, I have a hand, but I don't say I hand, right? You don't say I brain, you don't say I heart, but you say I. So I feet, no. I legs, I chest, no. But I is there. So all these things somehow, but who is the I? Who am I? And that's one of the things I love about music, is music, even if you don't have any philosophy or belief system, music has the capacity to open you up to something else is going on. And even the musicians themselves know it. The most, like, I don't know if you know jazz music, but Coltrane, he wrote this song, A Love Supreme, because he felt music flowing through him that he didn't create. It was coming from above and flowing through him. And that experience is transcendent. It proves I am not this body and you are not this body. We are eternal. Sat Chit Ananda. Bliss, eternity, wisdom. That's who we are. That's the substance of reality.
Yeah. And when we're speaking about music, you're like the original Kirtan king of the internet.
I'm the king. I'm the Kirtan pauper. I'm the beggar. I'm the Kirtan beggar.
Or like the trailblazer
I helped.
of the the YouTube modern Kirtan movement. So like, for the people listening, what are some of the top things what are some of the top pieces of music that people have listened to over and over again?
Yeah, we have, so I have two projects. One is a group called As Kindred Spirits. So if people look for Gaura Vani and As Kindred Spirits, one song called Moods of Kirtan, which has been played, millions and millions of times. It's basically from the teachings of Chaitanya about what Kirtan can bring up in the heart. And the chorus is, Param Vijayate Shree Krishna Sankirtanam. Such a beautiful...
Can we listen?
Yeah, maybe. Can I play it a little bit?
Yes.
Let me get the harmonium.
Yes.
This beautiful song. So Sri Chaitanya, when he was young, he was a very renowned scholar. And all 4 branches of Vedic learning had been memorized and brought by one man named Sarvabhauma to Nadia, where Chaitanya was born. And so it was one place in India where you could go to master all the branches. Mithila was one, South, like each place, but they all were brought to Navadvip, to Nadia. So he was a really well-known scholar, but as he became more into bhakti, he gave up all the scholarship. And there's no teachings written by Chaitanya himself except for these 8. So he used to say, even though he was so famous as a scholar, as a young person, he used to say, oh, my guru, he says, I'm just a fool. And I can't understand Vedanta. I'm too foolish. And he told me just to chant and dance. So of all of his teachings that, were disseminated by Rupa and Sanatan and so many people, there's only these 8 verses that come from him. So this first verse, it says, Param Vijayate Shree Krishna Sankirtanam Param Vijayate Shree Krishna Sankirtanam. Anything you can imagine can be given to you by the simple act of singing God's names. It's the greatest blessing, the greatest benediction. It opens the door to the magic beyond your wildest imagination. Param Vijayate, the topmost shocking victory can be achieved simply by Shree Krishna Sankirtana. And then he sings, in this dark age of Kali, there's something very magical happening. These are Chaitanya's words. In the dark sky, there is a moon rising, and that moon is the holy name. And amazingly, those of us born in the age of Kali, we have hearts that are like the Kairava flower, which is a night-blooming lotus. Amazing. So it's nighttime, and there's a moon rising, and we have hearts that only bloom in the moonshine. What magic. What happens? What is that moon? That moon is the holy name. And as the rays of the holy name come and wash our Kairava hearts, a fragrance begins to pour out over the world. And I see that fragrance as the good deeds and kindnesses and charity and empathy and all these things that come from the awakening heart. You see everyone as brothers and sisters. You see everyone's troubles as your own troubles, right? I'm not Indian, I'm not American, I'm not white, I'm not rich, I'm not any of these things that are my body. I'm a soul, and everyone, every living creature, even plants, animals, brothers and sisters, wherever there's the soul, that's the presence of the divine. So this is that fragrance. Chetodharpanamarjanam. These are Chaitanya's own words. Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitarana Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Pradivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shree Krishna Sankirtanam Param Vijayate Shree Krishna Sankirtanam Param Vijayate Shree Krishna Sankirtanam. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare Param Vijayate Shree Krishna Sankirtanam.
This is one that has been played over and over.
Millions of times. Millions and millions of times. And I feel so lucky that I got to be a vehicle, a vessel. Obviously, I didn't write the song. Even the melody actually comes from Prabhupada's own melody for this. I just kind of messed around with it.
This is an interesting subject because when you played the first track, also Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama, you've taken a mantra and then you've given it a melody. And so how does one go about, like, I know that when we spoke a little bit before, and that was like the biggest takeout of the discussion for me, because there was rag and then there was mantra, and then you merge rag and mantra and you get a new melody.
Sure.
And then you have a new flavor to the mantra.
Right.
So what's your process of creating the music?
I feel that music that comes from the heart is the most effective at expressing, and also it's more easily received.
So can we create a melody on this live, if it's okay with you?
Yeah.
Like
which mantra would you like to sing?
I would like to sing the Maha Mantra.
Okay.
Something that you haven't done before.
Okay.
A melody that you haven't done before.
Okay.
On the Maha Mantra, and basis the flavor of what we've spoken about today.
Okay.
To kind of.
Well, so one easy way to start in composing a new melody is to find your root note. So in Indian music, the sa and the pa give a nice, like what you would hear on a tanpura, they give like a bed of sound. And you can just start sometimes by singing that main note. So the mantra, Hare Krishna, right? So this is the beginning of melody. You have one note. Krishna, Krishna, Hare, Hare. So remember, for Kirtan, a big part of it is tala, because you also have to have a rhythm, otherwise no one can sing with you. So that also changes things. It's like a triangulating. You have the mantra, and then you have the raga, and then you have the tala, and where the Venn diagram meets is where the song
where the magic begins.
Yeah.
So what tal do you feel like putting right now? This is so good, like it's like receiving from a master, so I'm enjoying it.
I'm not a master. I'm a beggar. I'm definitely not a master. But I'm in deep enough that I can cause trouble. It's receiving from a joyful beggar. So. Joyful beggar, that's for sure. That's for sure. So the most simple rhythm is, like what they call teen tal.
16 matras.
Right? Nice, easy rhythm. In Western music, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. That's the most universal beat. Most cultures, have this rhythm. And then, as you're thinking of a melody and a mood, you kind of feel, do I feel sad? Do I feel happy? Do I feel intrigued? And how you have to really pay attention to your heart. And then what happens is you can start exploring and pulling on some different things. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Now the next trick is to remember what you just sang. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Something like that. Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. So for me, this melody is like, it's sweet. This is the conversation from my perspective. It's been sweet. It's been a really sharing of the hearts. I hope that you feel that way. I've been feeling that way, that meeting of the hearts. But also there's some intrigue and some excitement for the future. Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna. Right? That bringing the higher melody. Hare Krishna, and you're doing a big jump. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. And a nice sweet resolve. If you were to feel differently, you would add in a different note. You might say, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Changes
It's more reflective.
Right, it's more reflective. What do I think? How do I feel? Right? But I went for a sweeter one. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare.
That's cool.
It's all like an exploration.
You know, this is good because, like, firstly, thank you for sharing this way, because it's being part of the process. And like, I know you're saying, you know, you have done what you've done, and the millions of views of what people have seen. It's a small glimpse for the viewers, and like for me, it's incredibly privileged to be able to see like how mood comes out, how feel comes out.
Yeah.
And in the middle
it's
of
magic. It's magic. It comes, and it comes from who knows where it comes. Yeah. Another group that I would encourage listeners and viewers to listen to is a group called Hanuman.
Yeah, such a cool name. That one.
Thanks.
Hanuman.
Yeah. So the idea is that.
How did that name come about?
Well, you know, you have Superman, Spider-Man, and you have Hanuman, the original superhero, right?
Yeah.
He flies, he's strong, you know. So people idolize superheroes, but, you know, superhero of bhakti, Hanuman, that's a real superhero. Someone who lived and even used everything, his anger even, he used in service to Ram.
I think it's the coolest Kirtan band name that you can find.
And our music is very exploratory, and it brings in different cultures, and it's all about trying to find that inner place of bhakti and encouragement. So that's a fun group to listen to. Another good project. Yeah, so much exploration. Unlimited world of sound to explore.
I think this is a good note to end today's podcast, because we just ended on, you know, this where you've taken us, and there's so many chapters yet open. Because we started out and we still have to.
We have 10 more conversations we have to. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Beautiful. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Beautiful. Krishna. Krishna, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama.
Hare Rama.
Beautiful, Harsha. Hare Rama.
Hare Rama.
Rama, Rama, Hare Hare.
Rama, Rama, Hare Hare.
Should we sing together once?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Will you join my band?
If you allow me to be part of the Hanuman.
Anytime. We can always use more Hanuman.
That was so much fun. That was so much fun.
You really have a lovely voice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think what makes the voice the most beautiful is not when people are like super classically trained or, you know, do so many alankars or whatever. There's a certain storytelling quality of a voice that attracts me most. I find that's what's, of course, if you can do that and be really trained, then it's really incredible.
Yeah.
But I love the timbre of a good voice.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to. I used to be at a place where I was training, but maybe this is an inspiration for me to go back.
Please.
At some point.
Please.
Soon. But this is a great note to, we've spoken about the Hanuman, we've spoken about your music, we've spoken about the Gurukul system that you grew up in a little bit. I think we have more to speak about.
I hope so.
I think we need to speak about Vrindavan. We need to speak about it from your lens. But, like today has been such a blessing. I think we've not had this on the podcast where we've had beginning with music and ending with music. That's why I thought it's just the right time to close this.
Perfect.
And the thing that is staying with me from what you said is the part about the Big Bang. The Big Bang, the Om, and
it's the power of sound.
And the power of sound and the word.
The word. Everyone agrees.
Everyone agrees. And that's actually very, very crucial. So I think also given your worldview and your exposure to the West and your upbringing with, Vedantic principles, it puts you in such a unique position. So I just hope and pray that you're able to bring more of that integration, because there's so few people like you who can do that. So I just hope that, and thank you for sharing everything that you did.
Such a pleasure.
And
India and the culture of bhakti, the culture of the Vedas, it's given so much to so many. And my sincere prayer is that somehow or other I can also give back. This is such an amazing time for India. And what do they say, the Chinese proverb, may you be born in interesting times?
Yeah.
We're certainly born in interesting times.
We are. And then in those interesting times, if you get the opportunity to visit one of his Kirtan concerts,
Wonderful.
Which I hope we'll be seeing many more of
I hope so.
in India with Kirtan Mumbai and the team. We look forward. I think it's going to be so much fun.
Fantastic. I leave you after a few days. I go to Rishikesh, and for 3 weeks there's a Kirtan festival called Rishikesh Kirtan Festival. Every day, Kirtan, free open Kirtan festival in Tapovan and Rishikesh. So the world is being flooded, and I'm happy to be part. Amazing.